Time to look back at the last Forge FC contest.
Simply stunning stuff. And finally, their goal.
Here is Match and Review.
My word, what a rocket.
With Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network.
Hello, Forge fans. It's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. It is the Match in Review. And, this one feels good. It feels good already. Forge FC with thorough dominance from start to finish in the 905 derby against their arch rivals, York United. This was clinical at every stage and every facet of their game. And it was just complete. I mean, listen, as the score suggests, 4-0 dominance. But I mean, even somehow, if you watch the match, it was even more dominating than that 4-0 result suggested, because Forge hit a lot of posts in this one. In fact, at one point, they hit 3 posts in a span of 5 minutes and still ended up winning 4-0. That should tell you how dominant this performance was. So let's go. Let's go through it, and let's have some fun here, because it's been tough sledding for those of you who have consistently tuned in for these live match in reviews. There's been some rough ones. We've been waiting for this version of the club to show up, and here it is, and the results speak for themselves. Forge come out in their classic, let's call it a hybrid at this point. Let's say 4-3-3 formation, but we know that is fluid and can change. Taryn Campbell, Jordan Hamilton, Tristan Borges up top, Noah Jensen with Kyle Becker, and Hojab Rapport back in the starting lineup. And he was great in this one. Rosard Rama, Mandrakar James, Alex Ashton, Janssen, and Malik Olawabi Belawu making up the back line with Tristan Henry in goal. It was evident early from the very start that the pitch belonged to Forge. Complete dominance in the middle of the field. Kyle Becker, right, the maestro, the architect, whatever you want to call him, put on an absolute clinic. I mean, when you want to look at film, and if you're a young midfielder, even if you're a coach, and you want to just the definition of just a linchpin midfielder, the guy that just makes it go. I mean, this match, go back and watch the tape and watch Kyle Becker just from start to finish. I don't think you can be I don't know how much better you can be in all facets. I mean, his creation, his defending, his tenacity, the duels that he won, the feistiness that you like to see, especially in a rivalry match. It was all there. It looked like Kyle always had the ball, and when there was a crowd, he always came out with the ball. And it wasn't just him controlling the midfield. I mean, when you talk about a team controlling the midfield, it usually is a team effort, and it requires multiple midfielders. But I mean, Kyle Becker was just being Kyle Becker, and it just, I mean, not enough good things can be said. Noah Jensen involved as well. And just in terms of, he played a different role in the midfielder, more of an advanced position, more of an attacker in this one. Spent a lot of time in York's area. Did just created all kinds of havoc. Even when he didn't have the ball, he was a problem because he was so active off the ball. His runs off the ball, his movement off the ball, finding the open space, taking defenders with him, creating space for his teammates. Jensen gets it. And I mean, that's why even last season, right, it was his rookie year, and he looked just mature beyond his years, and he's taken that next step forward in his progression on a club that is so deep that it's hard to find minutes sometime. And, you know, for Jensen, he goes out there and he makes the most of his opportunities. Alessandro Hojab Rapport returns to the starting lineup, and he had an opportunity, and around the 12th minute, he had to go just from outside the area, just hit the outside of the left post. Love to see him more involved offensively. He gets, I have, to his face, I have called him a box-to-box midfielder, a complete midfielder. And he always gets a little, I mean, he's a very humble guy. And he always corrects me and says, no, not yet. I think I can be a box-to-box midfielder. I still have to develop parts of my game. I mean, I don't know. as far as I'm concerned, he's been that guy. He was that guy last season, the box-to-box guy. I mean, the amount of times he has shown up in big moments, scored big goals, made key plays, it just, and I mean, the work rate, the amount of minutes he's put in, and he's another guy. I mean, this midfield is so crowded, and it's a good problem to have. And so far, everyone making the most of their minutes, and that's what you want to see on a team where sometimes you do have to put ego aside, and it's tough. We can't discount the fact that a lot of these players, I mean, they're playing for their careers, for their livelihoods, and all of them naturally want to play as many minutes as possible, and to be able to just, humble yourself and have that next man up mentality, and still work hard in training, and just being a good team guy. I mean, that's so much easier to say than it is to actually put into practice. But I mean, this team does it to perfection. So I mentioned all Forge early. 3 shot attempts in the first 15 minutes. York didn't even enter Forge's, that attacking third of York's attacking third. They didn't even enter it until about the 20th minute. It didn't even result in a shot. In fact, it was a great play defensively. Ashton Yodiansen was back. Tristan Borges ran back to break up the play, and team defending. Exactly what we talked about with those 3 keys, which we're going to go through, because, I mean, this was just, you talk about clinical. I mean, even the 3 keys, just check, check, check. But we'll get to that in a bit. The scoring spree started in the 25th minute. The league's all-time leading goal scorer, Taron Campbell, involved, and he opens the scoring. 1-0 for Forge FC in this one. I got to tell you, Campbell had so many opportunities this year. I mean, we saw it. Some tough luck, right? I mean, that was a big part. I mean, that's been the theme for this team. But Taron Campbell back on the board, 25th minute, puts Forge up 1-0. Becker, Malik playing catch with the ball. They switch to Borges on the right side, volleys it to the opposite post to Jordan Hamilton. He was stopped. Rebound leaks out to Taron Campbell, who had a wide open goal. And I mentioned Noah Jensen just creating trouble. He didn't factor in on this, but he was the guy at the center of a crowd, just taking defenders with him. By the time this ball went in, Noah Jensen was actually on the pitch. He fought his way to the goal. He was on his belly, actually. But again, just creating. Even when you don't have the ball, you can create. Jensen doing the dirty work, and Campbell with the goal. So that was in the 25th minute. But a minute later, it just, this is where you always want to see how both teams respond after a goal. And that usually kind of sets the pace for where the mentality is. After that goal, York kicks off, Forge in their faces, pressing. York overwhelmed, turning the ball over. Within, again, a minute after that, York tried to build something. Forge in their faces, quick turnover. Jordan Hamilton hits the left post. Utter and complete dominance. Just absolute clinic. Best start to a match that we've seen all year from Forge FC. This was vintage Forge. For York, guys like Mo Babuli, Brian Wright, I mean, ghosts, invisible, because there was no one to service them the ball, because they just couldn't get anything done. So those guys clearly frustrated. That's what you want to see. If you're Forge, the top guys on the other club shaking their heads, just looking miserable and frustrated because they were non-factors in this, and Forge saw to it. At about the 30th minute mark, I had to look at the numbers because I thought, is this as dominating as it seems? The possession didn't quite indicate. I mean, 57% possession, still pretty good, but it felt like more. But here's where the real story was. Goal attempts, 7-0. Okay, shot attempts were 7-0 for Forge, 2-0 on target. We can go down. I mean, dangerous attacks. Forge had 24 dangerous attacks in the first 30 minutes. I mean, and York had 9. Even that 9, it's low, but I was trying to think, like, when were those dangerous attacks? I don't. It just didn't feel like York had anything going. The only opportunity I would say there was this was probably York's best opportunity of the night. It was on a counter, right? One of those things that Forge has to be careful of, especially when things are going well. They can be caught when they get a little too comfortable in their attack by just getting beat on the counter. In this instance, York didn't have an opportunity off the counter. Lapierre ripped one off Henry's fingertips, went off the bar. That was pretty much it for York. At the 28th minute, their best opportunity of the night came and went. 3 minutes later, Noah Jensen, left-footed strike, right off the corner of the bar. At that point, Forge had hit 3 posts in 5 minutes. And that was almost, that kind of encapsulated Forge's season to this point. It's just not getting the breaks. They're up 1-0, but when you see 3 posts in 5 minutes, there is that feeling of like, oh no, is York going to get the next opportunity off a counter? All it takes is one shot to even this game up, and Forge deserved so much more. But mental toughness, right? They came into this mentally, physically ready, because despite those missed opportunities, it just did not slow them down whatsoever. Didn't get them down. By the way, I loved the Jordan Hamilton, Taron Campbell combo up top. Absolute forces of nature, leaning on the York defenders. Those two guys, I mean, those big bodies, and they're so smart. And between the two of them, I mean, the amount of goals these two guys have scored in their career, just prolific in the area. And when you have two big bodies like that are just, I mean, if you're a defender, it's always a threat when those two guys have the ball in the area. And even when they don't and they're charging, and I mean, both are good in the air. Just those two are a problem when they're on the pitch together. And when you have guys who can create, like Becker, like Borges, and deliver the ball the way they did in this match specifically, you could feel that York was in for some trouble. And then the trouble just started snowballing for York. 33rd minute, Campbell gets his brace. It's 2-0. Again, I've used this word a lot already, clinical, but one of the most clinical finishes you'll ever see. One pass out of the Forge backline into space, into the midfield. It was collected by Borges. Just beautiful through ball that splits the defenders. Campbell gets in behind, and just a little finesse shot around Giantsopolis, and that's 2-0. It just, I mean, all I wrote here was, all word for word, my notes. Truly one of the most dominant performances you will see. Still, though, a lot of soccer to be played, and you got to finish. You got to finish. Where's that killer instinct? Well, it came. 36th minute, though. This was harsh. Malik, who, by the way, had one of the best performances he's had at left back, took a really harsh yellow on a slide tackle, in which he got all ball, by the way. I mean, there was a bit of minor contact, but the contact with the ball was first. But the York player screamed when you can hear it through the television broadcast. A loud, like someone had been stabbed. He went down. The official obviously bought it. And I've been saying this for a while. I thought, we are still about growing and developing the game in this country. And these kinds of things, the blatant simulation, the over dramatics when there are no fouls there, I thought this league, there's an opportunity to be a leader here. Those things are a huge turnoff for the sports crowd in this country. It's just the way it is. As a league, still a newish league into its 5th season, I mean, you can really kind of be a leader in this category. I've been saying it retroactively. I don't know who, but watch the tape, go through these matches. When you see things like this, retroactive punishment for let's call it blatant simulation. Whatever. It makes it sound more professional when you call it that. But for a guy to scream when he hits the turf after clearly minimal contact. When you see disproportionate reactions to these things, I don't see what the harm is in a retroactive warning followed by, I don't know, a booking, a fine, whatever the case may be. Take the lead on this. I mean, it's going to help. Believe me. Players are going to rethink their actions when there is some punishment. Because by the way, it's also kind of embarrassing to not only do it, but then get punished for it. I mean, it's kind of the ultimate embarrassment. That'll smarten things up a little bit, but that's just me. Listen, point is, Forge is on a roll. 47th minute, Hamilton, who put together a really strong performance, one of his best. Tough break, takes a challenge, needed medical attention. He did not scream, by the way. He was actually injured and did not scream. And that unfortunately cut his night short. David Chouanier enters the match in his place. And this is just before halftime. Speaking of just before halftime, Mandrikar James, he got booked. A really needless challenge on his part, way up the pitch. There was no threat. It was also, I mean, we were seconds away from the halftime whistle. A little over aggressive, strayed from his defensive post. As it stands now, he was booked. As it stands now, according to the broadcast anyway, he'll miss the next match. And I mean, there's a guy you do not want to have missing matches. One of the best defenders in the league, an important piece for this club. But as it stands now, he will not be available for the next match. We'll see. Sometimes these things get overturned. I don't know. I don't know if this one will. But we go into halftime with a 2-0 lead for Forge. Expected goals on the night, 1.37 for Forge FC, 0.22 for York United. Better than expected goal difference. Possession at 54%. Shot attempts. This is one half, by the way. Forge FC, 12 attempts in the first half alone. York had 3 shots on target, 5-1 in favor of Forge FC, and a few posts on top of that. Dangerous attacks, 37-15, the edge going to Forge. We go into the second half. For York, I expected some big changes going into the second half. Change of formation, change of personnel after what had to be an embarrassing performance for York at home. No changes. And it was reflected in how this half started, because Forge right back on the board. 47th minute, Tristan Borges. If anyone deserved a goal, it was Tristan Borges. He gets on the board, his first of the season, 3-0. Kyle Becker again, creator. He lofts a pass, finds Borges on the left wing. Borges cuts into the middle, gets a favorable deflection. Finally, some luck on his side after a string of poor luck. Borges on the board. Forge up 3-0, starting the second half the way they started and ended the first. Exactly what, I mean, just all signs pointing to, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. Forge not done. 7 minutes later, Taron Campbell completes the hat trick. Third goal of the match, 4-0 Forge. By the way, there have been 6 hat tricks in CPL history. 3 of them are by Forge players. So Forge making up half of the hat tricks this league has ever seen. And I mean, the way this goal got started, David Chouanier, the sub late in the first half, bust down the right side, chipped his cross over just a sea of bodies. Taron Campbell timed it perfectly, gets up. York, I mean, I don't know at this point. It's already 3-0. Campbell wanted it more. Clearly, gets up, beats his defenders. 7th goal of the season for him. He's now tied for the league lead with Calvary's Bevan in goals scored this season at 7. But Campbell's played in 200 less minutes than Bevan this season. Equal on goals, though. Taron Campbell, 32 for his career. And the all-time leader continues to pile on the goals. in this league. York saying, we've had enough, make some changes, essentially conceding defeat at this point. They make a bunch of subs, take some key guys off, including Mo Babuli, although it didn't stop him from getting a red card. We'll get to that in a sec. Forge made some subs in the 67th minute. Damage had been done. Taron Campbell, well-deserved break. He was replaced by Pasillas. Sissoko comes in for Jensen. Samuel in for Malik. Poku made it into the match. So Forge now feeling comfortable. And they did their Forge thing, just hung on to the ball, kept possession up, and just finished off the match. Just patient, just fluid. It was kind of that well-oiled machine we've seen Forge put on the pitch was just, this was it. This was that team. And they finished as strong as they started. It was a near perfect match outside of some needless bookings. If there's one complaint, a lot of these bookings, a lot of these tackles were just needless, especially, this game was clearly in Forge's control. I get it. You're playing against a rival and things are still heated and there's still some pride in there and some, rivalries within the rivalry and things like that. But we'll see how that affects the next few games for Forge. 85th minute though, Mo Babuli, he's on the bench. He gets a red card from the bench. And then he threw something on his way off going into the tunnel. We'll see what comes from that. And all in all, what can you say? Let's go back to revisit those three keys because, it's perfect, right? Key number one was break the streak. Forge had conceded the first goal in 7 straight matches. A big reason why they have seen some struggles and haven't gotten the results they wanted because they were playing catch up, and not an issue in this one. This is why that first goal is so just monumental sometimes because they had the opening goal. And then they hit 3 posts after that. Now, if you hit 3 posts with the game scoreless, maybe you're getting a little nervous here. But they had that goal. They had some comfort, some security, not enough for them to mentally deteriorate because of some missed chances. So, all in all, that first goal was huge. They broke the streak. Key number one, huge check. Key number two, sheet cleaning. Forge needed to have a positive defensive result as well. Despite these dominating performances, they've given up some goals because of some sloppy play defensively. None of it can be blamed on Tristan Henry. Who's been probably one of the most consistent performers on this club all season, shows up week in, week out. You get the same guy all the time, exactly what you want from your keeper. And he was rewarded because he got some help from his team on this one. Clean sheet. You cannot have a bigger check than that because exactly what we got out of this. So 2 keys down, perfection. Key number 3, counter the counter. Forge has struggled this season defending the counter. In this case, York had a few opportunities outside of the one where Henry was forced to make a save with his fingertips. Outside of that, just York was not a threat. Just period. A couple of opportunities on the counter, but I mentioned a play earlier when it was when Urciuoli, Janssen, and Borges were able to track the ball and knock their defender, body their defender, and steal the ball. A big key to that counter, the counter key, is team defense. You can't have players stuck on an island, forced to defend 1-versus-1 all the time. And this was a pure team defensive effort from all parties, from all levels. And it was, it was a beautiful thing. Final stats for this one. Expected goals, Forge FC 2.34. Expected goals for York, 1.01. So based on the expected goals, perhaps York should have had something, but regardless, Forge with the edge there. Ball possession at 54% in favor of Forge, and shot attempts, they have York listed at 11. Now, that's a lot of missing the target there. 2 ended up finding the goal, and Henry made the stops. For Forge, though, shot attempts, 19, shots on target, 7. I mean, it is difficult to lose with that stat line like that in terms of shots. And we look at dangerous attacks, 58 for Forge, 38 for York. Again, I don't necessarily remember all of these dangerous attacks for York, but okay, I'm not the one keeping the stats. Boy, was this a match that this club needed for so many different reasons. They got everything they needed. You had your elite goal scorer just go off, get his hat trick. There's a guy you want feeling good. Tristan Borges gets that monkey off his back after, just having, I'm struggling with no goals, no assists. Now he's had assists in multiple games, and he finds the score sheet here. Again, someone who has been a prolific goal scorer in this league, just tough luck this season, but he found it. And you hope this is where the snowballing happens here. Jordan Hamilton had a really strong game. Malik had one of his best games at left back. Though the midfield, when you control, this was just, is there a word that transcends dominance? Because the midfield, dominance, it looked like only one team was playing in the midfield in this one, with Becker, Hojabrapor, and Jensen. And then even when the subs came on, it was unbelievably dominant. I guess that's better than dominant. And when you can't, it is very difficult to lose when you put out the effort it's almost impossible to lose when you put out this kind of effort. And it's a good sign because some big matches coming up. Before we get to that, though, we need to look at the updated table. Another 3 points for Forge FC, and they shoot back up into second place of the CPL table, 22 points. They're now just 3 points back of first place Pacific, Pacific now, they've gone winless in their last 2. After some gaudy stats, they've come down a little bit in recent weeks. Now, Pacific does have a couple of matches in hand on Forge, but these two clubs will play each other a couple of more times. So, again, the beauty of this league, matches in hand, all those things. You have an 8-team league. They're all playing each other at some point. It's tight, and they're all playing each other, and there's so many swings in points in this league. So Forge in good shape now. Goal differential looks so much better at +2 than it did coming into this one at -2. And, just like that, we can talk about this club's struggles, but with that performance, they're now tied for second in total goals as far as the clubs go. So the second highest scoring team in the league now. Everything just looks better. The defensive numbers, it's amazing what one match can do. And so with 22 points, they are at least rolling York in fourth place now with 20 points, but Forge and York level, because coming into this one, York had a 1-point advantage. So this one was big. And you want to talk about a statement game, especially on the road. By the way, shout out to all the Forge fans who you could hear. If you've been to a Forge match, you're familiar with the chants from the Barton Battalion. I heard every chant loud and clear through this broadcast. York, the fans were just completely dead in this one. And it really felt like not quite a home match, but certainly more of a home match for Forge than it did for York throughout. And also with that win, by the way, Forge now with the best road record in the league. They've played 8 matches on the road. They have 13 points. That is tied for the most in the league. They're actually tied with York. What they do want to build up is that home record, because they have the 6th best home record with just 9 points in 7 matches. But they will have a golden opportunity in less than a week, 6 days from now to be exact. At Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton, Forge FC, Valor, 7 o'clock. And you can be there live because that's you have the ability to be there front and center to catch Forge FC and Valor. Forge, these two clubs have played some tough matches this year. Forge now looking to build off of their result against York. And after Valor, you're going to want to circle this one because after Valor, 6 days after that, it is Pacific, which this may be a match in which first place is on the line. And what a thing it is week to week and how quickly things can change. And I listen, I read the stuff from the fans. I read the stuff sent to me. I read the comments. I read the boards. I'm always interested in what Forge fans are having to say. And there was some legitimate concern, right? We have this high bar of expectations for this club, and a little nerve-wracking when things weren't quite going Forge's way. Had all these very the responses went from, hey, we'll don't worry, we're going to turn this around soon, to let's just blow up the entire team and start. I mean, that's how ridiculous it was getting and how worried fans were getting. Well, look, a couple weeks from now, there's a very good chance this club will be playing for first place on the CPL table. So that's how quickly things can turn around. So your final, once again from York Lions Stadium, Forge 4, York 0. Taran Campbell, easily man of the match with a hat trick, the third hat trick in Forge history, the sixth in CPL history, and Taran Campbell adding to his all-time leading goal tally, which is now at 32-7 on the season. He's tied for top spot. Plenty of storylines going into their next match against Valor. We will have them all for you. Mackenzie will have you covered throughout the week with her Forge Daily podcast. And then I will be back for your match day preview to get you set for Valor on Saturday. All right. Hope you enjoyed. I know I did. And we'll talk to you very soon.
This has been Match in Review with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. For the latest on all things Forge FC, subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.